Hello, and today we'll be focusing on cognitive behavioral psychology as well as humanistic psychology. First, we need to know the terms of each. Humanistic psychology is an approach that emphasizes the worth of an individual. This includes human values and creativeness and the active nature of human beings. On the other hand, cognitive behavioral therapy focuses more or less on the thought process as well as behavior. They also focuses on how to reduce psychological stress. So this is a study of how one's thoughts and how one's behaviors can influence their mind. And it is very important to understand one's way of thinking because we all think differently. So if we understand one's way of thinking, we know how to approach a situation differently in order to get a different reaction, in order to get a different behavior. For example, let's say your son didn't clean his room, right? It's not the way you say things, it's how you say it, basically. So basically, depending on how you ask him to clean his room is going to depict his behavior. So if you barge in yelling at him saying your room is a mess, this is a disaster, you need to clean up or you're grounded, he may be rebellious to that. So it's really a neurological nature based on experiences and sensory perception, which can involve their emotions. Compared to, hey, can you clean your room? I'll give you, $5, or I'll take you out to eat or something like that. It's totally different. Like, oh yeah, I'll clean my room. I'll do that, no problem. So honestly, cognitive behavioral therapy focuses on maladaptive thoughts and behavior, and it's very important to be rational, psychologically of the head and not the heart. So worrying about their thoughts and not their feelings. Let me just look at my notes here. Excuse me. Excuse me. So, humanistic psychology begins with the people of free will. It also has to do with emphasizing a personal worth of an individual. So this means human values as well as the nature of well-being, so in our natural habitat. This also involves different concepts such as self-actualization. Human psychologists argue all the time that perception and understanding is very important when studying humanistic psychology, because everyone has a different type of perception. Everyone has a different understanding of the world. This can be due to experiences. This can be due to what your parents taught you or your beliefs. Everyone has different beliefs. It's always a different experience with that. Let me just look at my notes here. Let's see, let me go back. Let me go down. Sorry, there's a lot of notes here and I don't want to just read off of there. So with humanistic psychology, there are many strengths and many weaknesses and many different limitations. A couple strengths that humanistic psychology has is the focus on behavior of an individual, which we just covered. Also focuses on the unconscious mind, genes, and observable behavior. So there are many behaviors that fit into humanistic psychology due to your hereditary genes. An example would be alcohol addiction or drug addiction. Usually is hereditary. It can be due to the environment you grow up in or the observation. This is something that, that's what I've always known, that's what I've always seen as a kid, so that's why I choose to do it. Some of the limitations would be beliefs of free will in opposition to the determined laws of science. So many people are just fighting the thought process and critical evaluations of how to approach humanistic psychology, because a lot of people, it just begins with the approach, sometimes with therapy, sometimes with motivation. It just depends on the different personalities that they have. On the other hand, we could talk more about cognitive psychology. Let me just look at my notes here. So we touched a lot on humanistic psychology. So we may wonder, what is cognitive psychology? And basically, it's just the way people process information. So this is why it goes hand in hand with humanistic, because as humans, we all feel, we all think differently. And with cognitive therapy, it's almost the same thing. It's the way people process the information. It's this the study quote is to study internal processes that include perception, attention, language, memory, and thinking. Um, an example that they provided was the brain makes a connection as we learn, and different ways to remember we have learned. So, for example, in my biology class, or chemistry, there's many different examples, and there's so much to remember, but sometimes it helps to make a rhyme, like, what is it? It is solids, liquid, and gas, to remember that, you can think of, this is a term, like different terminology to remember that. Um, like I am made of a solid, liquid, and gas, or humans have solid, liquid, and gas. Is this different ways a cognitive think in order to learn, and in the medical field, there are many different terms that help you remember different procedures and different bones and arteries and tendons. Like, it's a lot to remember. So it's just different types of strategies and ways to learn in order to connect your brain to remember those type of things. Let's see, let me look at my notes. This is very useful in fields of psychology as well, because psychology, you have to memorize a lot of different psychological concepts, a lot of different psychological terms, characteristics, scientists, as well as what they stand for, as well as what they taught, who they objected towards, what was their main view, what was their point, the year, and the way the brain works. That is very, very hard to study and remember every single thing of how the brain can work. So with cognitive psychology, it is very useful and applied in many fields of psychology, but you need to pay attention. It creates perception, memory, as well as development. Let's see. It mentions that there are 3 main cognitive psychologies that are important to memorize. However, I honestly think there's more than 3, because there's so many different types of terms and concepts that go into cognitive psychology. Let's see, knowledge, sorry, there's just a lot in my notes. Basically, they broke down knowing, attention, memory, and reasoning. They gave many different examples, but we all know the definitions of memory, attention. However, we may not know the definition of reasoning. Reasoning is the ability to form an opinion or reach conclusion through gathered information. So an example of this could be also in my biology class. There are many different hypotheses that we need to test in order to have a conclusion or to write an analysis. So this says that it's form an opinion or reach conclusion through gathered information. So throughout the lab or the experiments, we write different types of notes, and we write our observations in order to answer the hypothesis, which is a question. And then we can make an opinion based off of that. This is constructed knowledge, and this is essentially the process building of knowledge base. Cognition is a word that is used to talk about and thinking, but it also involves more than just one component. It also involves different types of components, but I'm not going to go over those today because it's just a lot. But these both go hand in hand. It's just really important that we distinguish them the proper way, because cognitive behavioral therapy is similar, but they are therapeutic relationships, so they're not 100% similar. It's a more of a therapy goal oriented, focus on your thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors. So this is really a strategy that a lot of therapists use, because they're there to listen and they're there to help and they're there to help heal, but they need to have cognitive behavioral and humanistic strategies in order to provide the help that the individual needs.